Step into a world of romance and mystery with Tamora Rose. Today we're reading Chapter 5 of Child of the Wind. "Give me that," Edward snapped as he tore the glass of brandy from his brother's hand. "She'll be here within the hour, and you really shouldn't be drunk the first time you meet your wife." "She's not my wife." That sounded just a little petulant, but Jett just didn't care. "She's going to be." Ed downed the brandy in a single swallow. "So put some boots on and get ready to meet her." "Mousy little Scottish brat." His brother fell into the nearest chair. "You do know she's English." "I do not care." "Clearly." They sat together in silence, both considering the girl who would soon arrive. Edward, who had been more familiar with the old Earl and his wife, was a little more optimistic than Jett. He remembered the delicate Countess and how her beauty had been seamlessly blended with the Earl's strength and their 3 sons. Well, the boys hadn't been what anyone could call beautiful. They'd been far from ugly. They'd been handsome in a primal sort of way. With any luck, the girl wouldn't be as horse-faced as Jett feared. But there was no telling Jett that. His younger brother was convinced that the girl would be short, fat, and as ugly as any woman could possibly be. Oh, and she couldn't speak English and was likely a heathen. One with mousy hair and empty eyes, and splotchy skin. The absurdity of it almost made Edward laugh. While some of those things might be true, it was unlikely they all were. Jett was just being stubborn. Their mother chose that moment to poke her head into the parlor. "Would you two hurry?" The displeasure was plain in her voice. "Canace will be here any moment." "What are you yelling at me for?" Edward asked as he stood and stretched. "I'm not the one sitting here getting drunk with no boots on." Rosemary stormed into the room. "Jett, you had better not be drunk." When she got no response, she smacked her younger son on the back of the head. "All right," Jett grumbled. "But we might all wish I was drunk before this was over." "Stop it," she snapped as he levered himself out of the chair. "You will be polite and courteous to Canace whether you like it or not." Jett didn't answer, but he did leave the parlor in search of his boots. "Is he all right?" Rosemary asked her eldest son. Edward shrugged. "He just doesn't want to end up marrying some pudgy little pig. He hasn't even seen her yet. And that's the problem." He moved closer so he could put an arm around his mother's waist. "We probably should have contacted Max sooner. Had him bring Canace here at least a year ago. Then they'd know each other." He was right, and she knew he was, but it didn't matter now. The girl was on her way. It was too late to worry about anything else. Rosemary shook her head. "Go find your brother and make sure he's outside to greet his betrothed." When she stormed from the room, Edward shook his head and cursed. "Stop shuffling your feet," his mother instructed as they watched the carriage roll to a stop in the shade of a huge oak tree. The riders accompanying the carriage formed a half ring behind it. Jett did as he was told, but he wasn't happy about it. She was in there, the woman he was supposed to marry. His nerves were shot. This was shaping up to be a real catastrophe. A burly Scot with black hair slid off his massive horse and approached the carriage. Mac, if he remembered correctly, but Jett didn't care much about Mac. His gaze shifted to the sparkling carriage. At least she was arriving in style. Mac approached the carriage. Jett's back straightened. Mac's hand touched the door. Jett's throat tightened. "Here comes the little mouse now," Edward whispered. Jett might have shot him a withering glare, but he couldn't take his eyes off that carriage. Mac pulled open the door, reached inside, and drew forth a dog. A medium-sized black and white dog hopped down from the carriage, Mac holding its jeweled leash firmly in one large hand. "It's a damn dog," Jett muttered. His brother laughed under his breath. The Scot transferred the leash to his other hand and reached into the carriage once more. This time a slender hand met his. The hand was small and delicate. That was a good sign. The hand led to an arm, and after the arm came the woman. As her slippered feet touched the grass, Jett studied her. He couldn't see her face from here, but she was thin enough. Not pudgy at all, in fact. Again, encouraging. Unfortunately, her hair was that dull brown he'd been expecting. Most disappointing. Her eyes were probably that empty gray he'd been dreading. And she was short. He'd be surprised if she was even 5 feet tall. He himself was quite tall, just over 6 feet, so he preferred his women several inches taller than this petite girl. He couldn't imagine bedding such a tiny thing, and yet he'd have to reconcile himself to it if he was to marry her. That dull hair was a turn-off for him, but he tried not to show it. His mother was right in one respect. None of this was her fault. The least he could do was be polite while he struggled to find a way out of this marriage. And he would find a way out of it. He would not marry a girl with mousy hair. He would not. Mac led her forward, bringing her out of the shadows and into the light. The moment the sun hit her hair, there was an explosion of color. Reds, browns, even purples danced across her locks. He hadn't noticed before, but her hair was long, probably reaching her knees. It was pulled back from her face, revealing delicate cheekbones and slanted eyebrows. She wasn't entirely unattractive. Movement from the carriage caught his eye. A flash of white emerged from the darkened interior, causing him to blink in surprise. 2 little lambs jumped out, stumbling on the grass in their haste to follow Canace. One made a soft bleating sound as it pranced at her feet. Just a little bemused, Jett stared at the woman, her lambs, and her dog. What an odd group they made. Once they were directly before the Duke, Mac released her hand. "May I present the much-matured Canace Barsland," he said with a grin. On cue, Canace sank down into a graceful curtsy, skirts pooling around her. Her position afforded Jett and everyone else an unimpeded view of her luscious breasts. They were of a decent size, not so large as to appear awkward on her delicate frame, and not so small as to disappear in the fabric of her gown. The skin was smooth and creamy, making him itch to touch it. Beside him, Edward leaned closer so he could whisper, "If you don't want her, I absolutely do." Jett didn't blame his brother for lusting after her. Her body was trim and athletic, her breasts lush and beautiful. In short, she was exactly the type of woman who was a pleasure to bed. If not for the height, she was just too tiny. He tried to think of her as a child, but those breasts told him she was all woman. The Duke moved forward and took her hand, pulling her to her feet. "Come, my dear, let us not stand on ceremony when you are so shortly to become a member of the family." At those words, that potent reminder of his future, Jett stiffened. For a moment he'd forgotten that he'd soon be forced to marry her. Marry this woman, child, whatever she was. If only she were just a bit taller. His mother was already moving forward to embrace the girl. "You're so lovely, child. Such a beauty you have become. So very much like your mother." Those words almost caused Jett to flinch. He felt that they were almost surely directed at him, especially after he'd gone on about how dowdy Canace must be. "I wouldn't know, my lady." Canace's voice was soft and lilting. There was just enough of a Highland accent to catch Jett's attention, but she spoke English perfectly well. "None of that." His mother drew her forward. "You can call me Rosemary if you like." "Of course," Canace smiled, lighting up her entire face. In that moment, she had the face of an angel. "Well, now you won't remember him, but this is Edward, my eldest." Rosemary's smile grew wider. "And this is my youngest, your betrothed, Jett." Jett caught her hand, raising it to his lips. The girl smiled again as her eyelashes fluttered upward, allowing him to glimpse her bright amber eyes. For a moment he stood transfixed. He remembered the pale eyes of an infant, but he was staring into the glowing eyes of a woman. "My lord," she whispered, lowering her lashes as she dipped into another curtsy. He put a hand on her elbow, keeping her from finishing the movement. Please, don't. He wanted to see those golden eyes again, and he couldn't do that if she was bending her knee to him. When he touched her, her eyes snapped back up to his. Those brilliant orbs shone as bright as tiny suns and were so clear he was sure he could read her very thoughts. In her eyes he could see the nervousness, the uncertainty, even the fear that she hid beneath her calm exterior. Something about the fear caught his attention, made him feel sympathy for the lovely young thing he'd been presented with. Would you come inside? He offered. Edward sniggered beside him. Jett flushed, but he didn't take back his words. Canace, for her part, had developed a sudden case of intense shyness. Instead of saying anything at all, she simply nodded. Giving his brother a quick glare, Jett put an arm around her waist and guided her into the manor. The two little lambs followed. Rosemary was the first one to laugh. Well, that's that. Her eldest son, however, was not so sure. I don't know. She's pretty enough, and he was certainly relieved, but I doubt that will be enough to reconcile Jett to an arranged marriage. Mac moved up, clapped the Duke on the shoulder, and frowned. Jett isn't willing? Doesn't he know he has no choice? Of course he knows that, Rosemary answered. But he doesn't like being forced. And now that he's seen her and been reassured that she's not a dowdy little mouse, he'll get used to the idea quickly enough. Edward was of a different opinion, but now was not the time to say it. His father likewise remained unconvinced, but he put the wedding out of his mind for a moment. He looked at his old friend, the burly Scot he hadn't seen for 15 years, and frowned. We haven't heard from you in some time, Mac. The Scotsman shrugged. It seems safest. My people tell me the men behind the slaughter were never caught. Your men? Alan was instantly suspicious. Mac sighed. I know what you're going to ask, but I'm not going to answer you yet. If the attempts on her life start again, it's better you don't know where she was or where I make my home. That way, at least, I have somewhere to take her if the situation becomes dangerous once again. The man had a point, so Alan let it go. They really didn't know that Canace was safe. They were assuming so now that 15 years had passed, but they didn't actually know. Better to be careful until they were sure of her safety. Alan led the way inside, but stopped on the threshold. What's with the lambs? Oh, them, Mac laughed. Malta and Una. They weren't my idea. I should warn you, Canace seems sweet enough, but she's got a fiery temper, and she's entirely too sly. I'd call her a manipulative little bitch if I wasn't so fond of the lass. Not knowing what to say to that, Alan started moving again. Behind him he heard Edward's rolling laughter and his wife's quiet sigh. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this chapter, stay tuned for more tales of romance. Until we meet again, may your days be filled with passion and just a touch of magic.